Last year, we did bring in some money from capital reserve. I feel comfortable doing that again this year that we could put towards capital projects. And I think we can get this done. So if you have no questions or concerns, I will try to get, hopefully, I believe we've asked March Windeman to come next Thursday night and speak to the health insurance issue. And then we should be able to finalize these numbers. I will need, I guess I'll prepare a budget with 3 different wage options, and then council can decide from there which one they wish to go with. Yes? Good?
Well, I've got questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Not sure exactly where to start. So when we talk about wages, can you just so everybody knows, because I had this conversation with you last year and again today. If we do dollar raises, the impact on the general fund budget is going to be $88,346.
Yes.
But there's also an impact on the enterprise fund, water and sewer, because we have workers who split their time, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So just so everybody knows, then that's going to have an impact of like $28,500 at a dollar raise to the enterprise funds.
Yes, I gave you those numbers earlier today.
Right.
Yes.
I'm just kind of repeating it. So I want to make sure all council knows this. And so the same thing on the $2 raise, the general fund budget impact would be $186,611. But in water and sewer and the enterprise fund, that's going to be $72,000 on the enterprise fund. Yes. So when we look at those numbers and we talk about the total the total impact of those raises, it really is, for a dollar raise, it really isn't $88,000. It's more like $116,000. The same with the $2 raise. It's really a total of $258,000 because it gets shared by the enterprise fund.
It does get shared. I was just showing you just reflection on what those amounts were going to do to this budget. But you are correct.
I understand.
It is a much bigger picture than just one.
I think that for the process of the decision making, I appreciate the numbers for the general fund budget, and they're solid. I'm not questioning that. No, it's well good. But that we need to think about the enterprise fund, the impact of that. That's a fee-based fund, and we're probably going to be asking for raises in water and sewer rates.
Sure. And they typically build those things. They'll build a certain percentage in for the future, and that's how that works. And, yeah.
I guess I have another question. Can you explain to me line number 11, which was telephones? I know that was a big question, and it looks like how it shook out on this budget is it more than doubles. So there's an increase of $46,210, so bringing that total line item to $79,310. So can you explain what's going on with that?
I think I've told you we have contracted with with a company that is looking at our phone bills in order to assess whether we are paying for what we should be paying for. It's not just a simple project. So they're going to come in here, they're going to go with every department head, they're going to try to make sure that every line that we're paying for, can you guys all hear me? That every line that we're paying for, we should be paying for, and what we're paying on that line, is the right cost. But at this point, if none of those costs get reduced, that is the amount of money we are going to need to pay those bills for next year.
Okay.
Now, there's other things in that line item, right, other than just that SEGRA cost, but.
So that's my concern, because the way I understood the SEGRA and the point of the SEGRA was it kind of was an intranet, and there were a lot of security.
Yeah, but there are other things in there. For example, all of the tablets, or all of the, what do you call your docking system in your cars? All of those things have internet service, and that is a big part of that cost. All of the policemen get a cell phone stipend.
Right, so I have a question.
Okay.
Specific. I understand all that.
Okay.
I do. My question is, because the service that Seagra was providing, and it was kind of a firewall lockdown security, so that we didn't end up like Marietta Memorial being ransomware, okay?
I don't know what about it.
So when we didn't have Seagra in the past, from my conversation with the former IT director, there were firewalls that we were paying for, other subscriptions. My concern now, especially I think everybody's concerned, we're worried about cyber attacks. Are we removing something that's going to...
No, I don't think we want to do that. We just want to make sure we are paying for what we should be paying for. I mean, I don't have any intention of removing anything that's necessary. And that definitely won't be my decision to make. I'm saying we're trying to do our due diligence because this is costing way more than we anticipated it costing. And so we are trying to make sure we are paying for what we should be paying for.
Okay, so but Seagra's still going to be in place?
As far as I know. Yeah, unless for some reason, it comes back and we think we can't live with it, then...
I mean, I'm not advocating for it one way.
No, I'm not either. I just think I don't have enough information at this time to say yay or nay. At this time, we are living with that for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? So I got more.
Keep going.
Okay. I probably have some of the same ones you do.
Yeah.
So next week, when the park board meets, they're going to have a special meeting and discussion about the pool. And then it'll come back to us, depending on what their recommendation is for closing the pool. So, if we don't have a pool next year, that's going to be a reduction of like $77,000. So how are you're going to bring us a budget next week?
I'm not sure it's going to change a lot between now and then, other than you guys aren't going to then vote until the next week. That there has to be some thought given to, is the park board going to need some funds to do an engineering study? Does some of that, is it going to need to be reallocated? There's some questions that have to be answered.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're just gonna come with where you're at right now with salaries next week.
Salaries, I'm hopeful that I'll get a health insurance number,
Right.
that I can have all that updated.
Okay. Also, festivals. I noticed in the short budget, which is line 547, that this particular budget year we're in now, that $5,000 has been taken out.
We gave that to Friends of Vienna.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Is that for the Freedom Festival?
Yes.
Okay. So,
And that originally was put in there for a future festival, and
right.
Yes.
Right. So I'm just trying to ask, where it went. Is it possible in the budget to create Friends of Vienna, to make them an
Yes.
outside agency so
Yes.
it's clear?
yes, I've actually thought, yeah, I definitely will do that.
Okay.
And it'll be more transparent.
Okay. And so that brings me to the current budget. There's $5,000, or I'm sorry.
In
the
future
20.
festivals, I saw that.
So can that be taken out and put into?
I don't have a problem taking it out. I don't know if we know of any other future festivals. I probably should have netted it against what was requested from Friends of Vienna, but I have not.
Okay. And I know, skipping to line 912, Civic Promotions, I think Mrs. Elam had requested that those line items be put back in, and I didn't see that reflected in the budget.
No, the
I can answer
varies-
that one.
Okay,
Okay, I don't want to put you on the hot seat.
that's okay.
Okay, I did not put those items back in. As the department head, I submitted those items. And if you want to change them, then council can vote to increase them, because that's where I think they need to be. Last meeting that we had that discussion, there were some items in there that were brought up about the cleaning for the COVID and the seniors and all that stuff. So I went back and pulled the invoices, and out of line item 30, there was zero spent on COVID cleaning. And the money that came out of that was for the normal cleaning procedure that we have a cleaning service to do, and for advertising, which is exactly what I told you was the part of the thing said it was for marketing, but there was no COVID cleaning attached to that line item. And so I see no reason to increase that because it's not being used. That was the line item that only had 44% of usage in the whole thing.
Okay, I said Civic Promotions, which is line 912, not 905 Senior Center. That's what I was talking about. So what Mrs. Elam said, she had she wanted the request put back in, and you said, okay, no problem, but they're not in there. So that's what I was talking about. I'm not talking about 905 Senior Center.
And as the department head, those are the levels that I'm comfortable with. If it's the will of council to allocate more money for those, then that's fine. Okay? But as the department head who submits the budget for this department, those are the numbers that I feel, based on usage. If you recall, we went through all of the percentages that have been used, and not any of them were close. And so I think the total reductions for all those accounts was $3,000. Okay? If $3,000 out of an $11 million budget is that important, then simply amend the budget and have council vote. If they want to put the numbers in there or increase the numbers that I submitted, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, so I thought that's what we were doing. On 912 Civic Promotions, you actually cut the budget was prepared and what you presented. You cut that by $9,000, and I think Mrs. Elam had a good point last week when she mentioned if we don't have the pool, what we don't want to see is to cut back on these Vienna family weekends and all the different things that have been set up. And I don't know how you we would have to cut some of those events in order to go back to the budget that you are presenting.
Can I give a for instance? So we talked about this last week. For instance, for line 30, that was strictly for snowbiz. And that is $425 every time they come. And it was reduced by whatever it was, like $125 or something like that. And which doesn't make any sense, or $150, whatever it was, because it was reduced down to $2,400 from the original $2,550. And then, so how do you get snowbiz in for $425? You're just for 20. That doesn't make sense to me. And so I know what you're saying, like with $3,000 in the scope of the entire budget. No, it's not. But this is one department, and if one department wants to have, I mean, if there's only going to be 5 snow bizes, then let's do 425 times 5.
Nope, I apologize. I'll stop you right here. That's a mistake on my part. We did the math, and it does add up to exactly what you said. So I need to increase that number to 2550.
Excellent.
No, you're correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. So that'd be line.
It's line item number 30.
30. Line 30 and 912.
Would you please correct line item 30 to 2550?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. That's my mistake.
Okay. Thank you.
It's still, I have a question about the line item 19, because you have all these events, and what my understanding was, the phone call was made to the people that do these events and what the anticipated increase in the cost would be. We're seeing costs increase everywhere, so it seems reasonable that the cost would increase on these events. So if we don't put them back to what was originally discussed, then, we're going to have to cut an event. And maybe that's what everybody wants to do, which is fine. But, I just don't know the process. If you're saying we're not going to put it back in the budget at all, or how do I get it put back in the budget? Because that's what we were under the understanding last week with Mrs. Elam.
We felt like we were editing things as we were going.
If you want to increase a line item, then you would need to come to this body and you would need to say, I would like to increase line item number 19 from 36,500 to 38,500. All right. Now, I'm telling you that I didn't take any money out of that line. Okay. When I submitted you the numbers, that was the number that was there, was 36,500. Okay. Yes. You saw numbers that were submitted by an employee that had a recommendation. After discussing this with her, I don't think that we're going to have these increases like you think we are.
Well, Well, that may be so.
But there again, I don't care. If council votes and wants to increase it to 38.5, then you need to just simply make a motion to amend that line item. And if council says, yes, we'll increase it by 2,000, then change the number.
I'm willing to wait on this one until next week when we see what's going to happen with the pool. And then we'll be able to say, if we are having the pool, then those numbers may be fine. If we aren't having the pool, we may need to increase all those numbers from what they are currently.
I agree. So we'll be prepared to go ahead and make that amendment at that time.
I think it happens when we vote on the budget.
Yeah, procedurally, I agree with Ms. Roberts. When you're set down to approve the final budget, you make your amendments and what have you then.
So what,
Right now, you're just talking about discussions, and it's always been my understanding the intent of this, discuss things that you want to take and put in and out of the budget. And then if the numbers are significant, Ms. Roberts gives you proposed budget, I guess, alternatives or.
so we're
What have you.
not, so we're not tweaking it week by week. We are literally saving all of our changes for the final day when we vote on the whole thing.
For final approval. I mean, I think you could probably tweak, make suggestions to Ms. Roberts now, and then when you do the final approval, you
Well,
make your
yeah.
final tweaks then.
Yeah, so, I mean,
The way I've always looked at this, as I understood it, is you're making proposals to her now as part of your discussion of what you think is and is not important, what does and doesn't need to go. So she has an idea of a bare bones budget to present, and then when you have the things that you want to definitively do, that's when you do it with in the final budget process, or at the time of
Basically, at
adopting the
this
final
point,
budget.
I've just used department heads. This is what they requested. We've gone back to them. We've said, this thing's out of balance. What can you live with? What can you live without? I've taken the department heads' recommendations. I have applied them to this budget.
yeah,
Yes.
good. And then, off of last week, I felt like we were making edits then, but apparently we weren't.
Yeah, that's what we run in the.
Because there were several things that were brought up and there weren't edits made. So that's where the miscommunication is coming in.
Okay.
And that is not on Mrs. Roberts.
Right.
She
Yeah,
simply
you were here.
tabulates, she simply tabulates the number,
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
And I'm not willing to change the numbers that I submitted. Now, if council overrides me and says they want to put it back in there, I'm fine, okay? But I've also looked at numbers closer than you all have as to what expenses we've used and what the need is, and but that's fine. If you want to amend it, fine.
So I have another question. About the flat grant, which is 410, line 58. I think it was said, the mayor said this, and I think I had a discussion with you about this somewhat. If we remove that out now, okay, and I recognize that according to the state, we're going to get the flat grant, but that could be this year, next year.
We are on the DOH's calendar for the 22-23 year.
Okay.
Now, I didn't know that until about 3 months ago. I thought, I was under the impression that we were on their calendar for this year. But no, the DOH says we are on their calendar for the 22-23 year.
Okay. So here's my question. So in a way to help balance this budget, if you took that $100,000 flat grant out now, because you could then, if the state, or I'm sorry, the Department of Transportation, whatever, comes up with, it says, here's your $350,000, start your project. We have to come up with the $70,000 to meet our match, the 80-20 match. Can't you take that from line 322, capital reserves, this is a nice capital project, and move that money in at
No, I
that
can
time?
always, I can move money in, yeah,
So
for
it's
any
not
capital
really-
project.
It's not necessary to have that $100,000.
I mean, except I've been told it is going to happen in this year, so, that's why I put it in. I was told it was on their calendar for 22-23, so I included it. If you would like to take it out,
No,
please vote to take it out.
no. Amy, let me get a clarification on that first, because it's my understanding that you have to have that money designated for your match.
Yeah, that is
So let me
possible.
clear that up with the state or the federal people to make sure that if we can take it out of capital reserve, that's fine. but that's not a designated fund that's set aside for our match.
Okay.
All right, and so let me get a clarification for you on that.
Plus, if we did it from capital reserve, would that require a budget revision?
Yes.
Right, versus if we know it's earmarked, it's required, I know our match is required.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a great opportunity for the city. It's kind of just sounds like a make-work thing to take it out and then have to scramble to get it back in, especially since you've got notice that you expect it in this budget year.
Well, the reason I suggested it, because actually, the mayor suggested it last week, and so I started thinking about it, I thought, man, that's a good idea. But, so that's a 20% match, $70,000, so can we take the 30 out?
The 30 was put in for additional, to get, I believe, I don't want to speak out of turn, was to get the industrial side up to.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yes.
So my understanding right now is that we are good with our licensed remediation specialists, that we have paid the budgeted amount for the final report. I mentioned a minute ago that things like this, that getting the Department of Highways to agree to and place the land use covenant that's required for River Road, which is their jurisdiction, is $5,000. Didn't see that coming, okay? But I think that a small reserve for burps like that, or little bumps in the road, pun intended, I guess, would make some sense again. I think that we're really close to the end of it on our expense, and I think that when you look at, at the end of the day, when we get all the numbers in and done, we're within the budget we discussed when we, in the first year that I was on council. But yeah, there's going to can be some little stuff like that, like I said, because I just found out, I talked to Tom Thursday, and he said, well, the groundwater sampling that they required at the end, which was another little bump like that, like $3,000 to get those labs done. Because we're kind of at the mercy sometimes of the DEP saying, oh, wait a minute, because they're a moving target. And so I think that the 30,000 is something that, because I think even we put 100 last year, and I think we used maybe 25.
We haven't used very much of it.
Yeah, if that. But that number, there are going to be some, I won't call them minor expenses, but some additional expense involved with that. And that's the example of the one I just learned.
Amy, before we go any farther, Russ would like to clarify something, so maybe it'll clear some of this up.
All right, because I think we've extrapolated this procedure a little bit, and I don't think we've done a good job of explaining it. All right, Amy prepares a bare bones budget. She takes the information from the various recommendations that the departments have. We bring it here. We talk about things that we're interested in having. Each council member has something that they're interested in changing or adding or subtracting from the budget. And my suggestion is, so then Amy goes back and she takes the things, she asks the department heads to resubmit or prioritize the things that they really, really want, as opposed to all of the things that they might want. And she brings that to you guys again, so you all can look at that and have an idea of what the department heads are prioritizing. And we then discuss those issues, and we're all discussing those issues because you may think that something is important. You may think that another thing is important. You may not think either of those are important, but have something else. So we have that discussion so that we can ask Amy questions about where does this line item go if we take this dollar amount from here? What does this mean, and so forth. Then we get to the final approval of the budget, and it's at that point that if Ms. Williams or Mr. Leach or Mrs. Elam has something that they want to formally add or remove it, you do it in the form of a budget. That way, everybody has an opportunity to vote on that thing. An amendment on the budget. I'm sorry if I just said that wrong. So you come back with a really roughed out version of what the budget is, and Amy generally brings you 3 of them because the biggest issue is we don't know is the healthcare cost. We haven't made an ultimate decision on what the pay raises may or may not be. So she gives you proposals reflecting all of those. And at that time, when we're getting ready to adopt the final budget, that's when you make a motion to say, well, I want to add $6,000 for Mr. Sassen's donation to the YMCA pool, or you have a motion and you say, I want to take $25,000 from the line item that is in this proposed budget and have it moved from somewhere else or taken from Manville. And then everybody votes on that final change as part of the adoption of the bare bones budget. And so everybody has an opportunity to make their suggestions, and then they're voted on, because some of the things just have to be paid regardless of how you want, how you may feel about them. But some of the things that we have some leeway to do, and it's at that time that you exercise the leeway, you prioritize this project over this project and so forth. And then she has to figure out a way using capital reserve to make that final budget, make sure it balances, and then the budget is finally approved and then sent on to Charleston. I hope that makes sense. This part of it is just for discussion now. And then when you want to make your actual changes, you do it in the form of the amendments at the time that we're going to adopt the budget.
All right, Kim, we go back to you.
I lost track of what I was.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate your clarification. It's very helpful. So, Mr. Leach, so what you were saying then, the 25, I don't know if this is working.
Do you want to switch spots with me?
No,
Unfortunately,
it has
mine
to
works.
warm up, I guess. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Leach, well, my question is, then the $25,000 or $30,000, $30,000 on the flap grant. I mean, let's back up. $100,000. We're calling it the flap grant, although we know that we're only going to need 70 for the flap grant. You are then saying that the 30 you anticipate could be used for anything on the production side, but not on Spencer's Landing.
Well, no, I won't go that far. I don't know of anything, that will be required on the Riverside parcel, which I'll characterize it as it is designated in the voluntary remediation program. We have our certificate of completion on it. So I don't anticipate anything there. And also, I don't anticipate, like I said, I was a little frustrated, when he said, well, there's a $5,000 fee for the Department of Highways to do this. I'm like, well, why didn't we already know that? Because as soon as we got that groundwater sampling back, they would have known that was coming. And so now we're just starting that process, and I was not happy about that. So yeah, I mean, besides that 5,000, and I can't remember if he said maybe another. I don't have any other expectation we're going to get another bill from Downstream Strategies but we do have to match the DEP. We have to pay them for their time. And so there's, Derek Hancock has to review the final plan. And so there's going to be some cost, so those are the things that you just don't know till the bill comes in.
Okay.
So I think 30 should be too much, but it's possible not.
Too much.
Yeah, I agree with that. So anyway, does that answer your question? I have a question for Amy when you're done.
Go ahead, please.
I have a question.
So, I got a comment about Henry's proposal and all the work he's doing to get the liner to pool. When my bones aren't too lazy, I've been a member of the Y since probably the mid-90s, since we moved back here with my kids from Morgantown. And over the years, I've seen the wax and wane of the condition of the Y. And I will tell you that under Jeff Olson's the executive director, and I was on the board for several years. I haven't been active recently. But the improvements at the YMCA and the services they're offering the community, especially through COVID with the child care and everything, they were able to maintain their kind of critical status for that. The overall quality operations of the YMCA since Jeff Olson took over as executive director have increased dramatically. They've made a lot of capital improvements. Ross Foundation, there's, Esmond Shays Group, have all helped. And so where would we look to get the money that Henry's asking for to help, again, just like with the Discover Center, invest in our kids? All of us want to keep a community that our kids want to stay around. My kids are raising kids here now, which is just fantastic. So where would we go? Where would you propose if we wanted to meet that need and do our part?
Okay, so if we're talking about in our current year budget, right, I would.
Henry, I'm sorry. What's your projected timeline for this, them pulling the trigger and needing the funds to do this?
They were talking about doing the work in August. I was hoping that, going around that we can have an answer back to them sometime in April.
So we could add that to next year's budget, right? To the 22-23? Because based
I
on
mean, I
what
guess the
their
first
needs.
place I would look is I kept the $5,000 in for future festivals, and it's possible that if you didn't want to use it for that, we could designate it.
I'd like your recommendation as to where we do fund that, and then same thing, when we get, like I said, I guess we may, when is, and then the final, we vote on the budget on the 24th?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I have to have it
Next
in.
week, I wouldn't be there.
Amy,
I
I'm
have to
sorry,
have
I
it
didn't
in
hear
hand.
your answer. Where did you say we could transfer the money from?
Well, in this current version of the budget that I gave you, I have left the $5,000 in future festivals.
Okay, fine.
But I have
just
also
didn't hear you say future
included
festivals, okay.
the 25,000 from the Friends of Vienna.
Yes,
So,
that's fine. In
I
the past,
could-
we have done the Falling Leaves Festival, we've done the Jazz Festival, we've done other things besides the Friends of Vienna Festival, so
you know, if that's, if
we don't
that
have to
is,
strictly do the Friends of Vienna,
you
but
know, I can take it out completely.
That was my
You
question.
guys-
Thank you.
Somebody
And
can,
my plug for the Y.
somebody can have Russ come with a resolution, and we could take it from contingencies if we were going to do it in this current budget year. If one of you wanted to direct Russ to do that, I will find the appropriate place to get the money.
okay, back to you.
You had a question?
Oh. I always have questions. Yes. Okay, so Amy, there are several things that are on my list, but now that I know that we're not really editing this as we go, I'll probably just hold them because it's,
I mean, if it's
that
a
conversation.
mistake I've made, please feel free to email me and I will address the mistake. I
Okay.
am not foolproof. I do make them. Thanks,
yeah.
Russ.
The, because you and I emailed this week and did in 440 for City
Yes,
Hall,
I have
that did
every-
get corrected?
That was my mistake, and I
Okay.
will correct those on the next version of the budget.
Okay,
There
awesome.
was $3,000 too much in.
In
which line item for?
equipment
I have
and
it
then
written down.
10,000 more in grounds.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it frees up like $13,000.
Yeah, okay.
In City Hall, which I had somebody helping me input the numbers, and I didn't catch that they input.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Correctly,
Yeah, just wanted to double check on that.
But that was a mistake, so I will go in and correct it.
Well, and just let me ask, so I can't help but ask. Okay, so when it comes to like the requests for the additional, like the S3 to an S4 and adding a captain, 2 patrolmen, subtracting a sergeant, is all of that's the discussion we're still having the night that we vote on the budget? Is that correct?
Hold on. The
When-
S3 to an S4 is a promotion in the fire department because we're now going to have our own inspector for our CDBG projects. We have to have a historical inspection done. And as soon as he gets his certification from the state of West Virginia, this will absolutely speed up, streamline our CDBG projects. So that money right there needs to stay in there because as soon as he gets his certification, then he goes an extra grade because of that.
So pay grade increases, that's not something that we vote on, that's something that's just a natural.
Somebody in Craig's department, for example, Public Works have very defined steps, how they move up grades, okay? That doesn't really translate. The parks have very, defined steps of how those guys move up pay grades. The fire department has one guy. And so they haven't ever really come up with that process for what makes this guy move up through the ranks. And so he came back and he said, this guy's a licensed contractor. He is going to take on the historical significance so that we can possibly do emergency repairs versus this, 2-month-long process that it takes us to get CDBG stuff through. And so, with those things, he would like to move him up from an S3 to an S4.
Yeah.
But the reason is, most of the time, we probably wouldn't, those would be addressed because, for example, Craig has very defined steps that move people up. It's just because there's just this one fella in this department and the steps Craig's steps don't pertain to him.
So that situation is different than adding the patrolman and captain.
Yes.
Okay. And so
Well,
that's what I was trying to see. So the S3 to S4 is already reflected in the
No,
budget?
I have not built any of those things on that sheet into the budget.
So that's what I'm saying.
It's 50 cents an hour, so
why-
it works out about
And I'm
$1,000.
for it. I'm just saying, we're still saying that we can't see it reflected in the budget until the night that we're voting on it. Am I right? Is that what we're saying?
well, more or less, yeah. I mean, Amy can, if you're asking council, if council is asking Amy to give you the numbers that reflect that in there, I assume that she can do that.
Well, let me ask this. Can we change, this was my question for you after council, I gotta ask you, because it might help for next week, because we do still have 2 weeks before we're voting. We have next week and the following week. So can next week, I know because we have it, not posted, what's the word?
Noticed.
Noticed. Because we have it noticed as discussion, we can't take a vote,
That's the
correct?
biggest hurdle tonight. That's the hurdle tonight.
Okay, then, so what could I call it next week
So that you could vote
so that
on
we could vote on certain things?
these items?
Yes.
Yes.
So that we can, because I feel like that's holding us back right now, so that you can print us kind of
I'd love to know.
our newest
Yes.
rough draft.
Yes, I'd love to know.
Yeah, so why don't we call it something else next week?
Proposed budget amendments, and then, something to that effect.
Okay, because that way
As long
next
as it's
week
not
we
just
can.
limited to discussion, you would be fine to do that.
Great. So I'll do that for next. Is that okay? That I'll do that for next week. That way, when you stand here, we can go through and say, okay, yes, I agree with this. I agree with that. Yes, change it. And then after next Thursday, you can plug all that stuff in and send us the new rough draft for our final night. Will that work?
Yeah, I think you could do that. You could absolutely do that. You just can't
Okay.
have it agenda the way you have it tonight.
Great.
We'll talk about the wording.
Okay.
There is one thing I wanted to point out with your discussion is you're allocating the money, let's say you allocate the money to move so that Craig has the flexibility to promote somebody to an S3 or an S4, or you allocate the money so that the fire department, and I don't know if I have those right, but you're allocating the money so Craig can make promotions that he needs, and you're allocating money so that the fire department can make the promotions that they need. You would, the difference in the police department from those are already structures that are in place within the city's structure. Police department is a little bit different. You can allocate the money in anticipation of somebody becoming a lieutenant or a captain so that the money's there in the event that they have the promotion. But you also are going to have to do an ordinance to change our police officer structure to reflect the changes. So you could put the money in, and unless you pass an ordinance that says you now have 9 patrolmen and a captain, that money can't be spent for the raises for a patrolman or captain because those spots don't exist. You're just budgeting the money in anticipation of modifying the ordinance in the event that they do exist or somebody tests into them or something like that.
And we would just need to modify the ordinance then
Yes.
between the time that we pass the budget and the time when the budget actually takes effect.
No. You can do it.
By
Well,
July 1st.
By July 1st, then it would,
you could do it that way. I think you could pass the budget, allocate the funds, and have the money in the budget, and then pass an ordinance at some point
Yes, before July 1st.
later. Well, yeah.
Or
I
if they
guess-
don't
Yeah.
get it done before July 1st.
yeah, I mean,
could
it
do
would be way before that, but just saying, so we could go ahead and
Allocate the
allocate the
funds.
funds for the budget,
Yeah.
and then before the budget is official, or,
Yes,
in
but that's
place.
not saying that
Good.
you are definitely going to do it,
Right.
right? That's just saying, we want to put the money in the budget and so that we can make the decision, the money's there.
Right. And you may change your mind and say, okay, well, we don't want to add a patrolman, and you don't want to change the structure. It just means that you can't spend the money that you've allocated in that line item.
Yes,
And then that would be a budget revision.
yes,
Yeah. If you wanted to use the
Okay.
money for something else.
yes.
Okay. All right, good, thank you.
Are we done?
Are we done? Okay, great. Well, that concludes our agenda for this evening. We now move on to council comments.
I have a couple comments. So talking about our discussion earlier about the ordinance, I believe, and even though we've already voted on it and it was struck down, but I didn't get my comment in, even though we don't have Robert's rules, we don't technically follow them, but we still have,
We haven't adopted them. We follow them generally. So, yes.
yes, so technically I could have still commented, but I didn't, so now I'm going to give my comments. The reason why I was in favor of it is because I believe it's a course correction. It's an opportunity to make a course correction to make sure we're honoring the process of how we do things. I am interested then in that case, just because of the precedent that has already been set, I would be interested in coming up with a resolution of some sort, just saying nothing can happen, no ground can be broken, or whatever at Spencer's Landing without council approval, something like that. I think something like that then would be helpful because, like I said, we already have a Story Rock, we already have a library thing, we already have a Gold Star Memorial, we already have those things, and I believe those things will continue to happen if we don't put something in place that says they can't without council's approval. And I still think it should go under parks because it's going to be a park and we should start the ball rolling in that direction. And if we have a problem with a department not following the directives, then that's a whole separate problem. I don't think you avoid the process just because you're anticipating, I don't think we avoid the process because we might have to buy another mower. I don't think we avoid the process because we think we might have to restructure our parks department, when we might have to do that anyway as we continue to develop our master plan. Are we going to be able to really do even half the things that we want to do in that master plan the CEC brought us with the current staff that we have? Probably not. So if we're developing our parks and taking them to the next level, we're going to have to take our employees to the next level. That means the number of employees, their responsibilities, the equipment that they're using, all of that. So I think it goes back to the process. Start with the process and then manage it from there. I don't think we say, well, but they might dig something up they're not supposed to. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that is what I would have said before the vote.
Any other council comments this evening?
I have a comment.
I promise you, I will have that fixed by next Thursday.
I appreciate that, Mayor.
I will. I mean, it's magic or something.
I don't know. I appreciate your comments, Mrs. Elam, but so it brings me to what you started off saying, is that we don't have any kind of parliamentary procedure. And so then when something like that happens, like what happened tonight, it's easy to say, well, we always use Robert's rules. You either use it or you don't, because then what happens is what happened tonight, which is somebody's rights really get violated. She should have been allowed to speak. So can we have a resolution to adopt Robert's Rules of Order?
We all went through Robert's Rules of Order training. Okay? Now, if you like the way that we conduct business and we informally talk about all these things, that allows you the leeway to let people speak. If you go to Robert's Rules of Order, you will not speak until you're recognized by the chair, and it really limits the discussion that you have, because I never wanted to be under those restrictions, the guidelines. The gentleman that came in here and gave us all of the Roberts training, John Sorrenti, he has been a county commissioner and I believe a city councilman for Moundsville. He knows the process, so it's not a matter of that, but I'm just cautioning you that if you want to play by the Bible, the Robert's Rules of Order Bible, that one right there is stiff as a board.
I agree. I'm very familiar with Robert's Rules. I use it in other boards that I'm on. So I agree with you. It's very restrictive. But when you have a situation, you used it to cut off what she wanted to say, and you wouldn't let her say it. So where's the happy medium? Because you can't use it when you.
I say if we don't, I'm okay with not using it. I just don't want it used against anybody like it was tonight.
Right.
Because I wasn't supposed to speak because of that. So either we follow them or we don't, and it applies the whole time.
Well, people go on and on and on, and I think the consensus for everybody was already known. You could be talking about it till midnight, and you're not going to change anybody's mind. And it's just part of the Robert's Rules of Order. The motion to vote was upheld.
So I'll have a discussion with Mr. Skogstad for the call for the question, because the absolute point of that is, if someone calls for the question, that stops the discussion. All right, but I'll work with Mr. Skogstad and see if we can find something that will allow a smoother transition. All right? Okay,
That'd be great.
okay. Anything else? All right. With that, Amy, thank you for coming tonight. And meeting adjourned.